monster homes are becoming a bigger issue. I think they're becoming a bigger issue. There's a story of a monster home project on Maui, which has caused some controversy. In fact, I got a picture for you. So check this out, gang. Uh, check out this picture. Now, this is what you call a monster home. Now look at that thing. Now, if you look at the scale of that, you could see the homes next to it. They give you a sense. That's a home. That's not a resort. That's a home. And somehow there's all kinds of controversy. It flew under the radar. Somehow mysteriously, this home was approved by the Department of Planning and Permitting. No one knows how it happened. How dare they? And anyway, there's all kinds of controversy now. They're trying to convert it back into a community housing sort of thing, or a community like a museum, a community cultural center. We'll see what's going on. There's all kinds of. There was actually to Scott. There was another monster home. Monster home is what by the way. So monster home is the term that we use for, as you might guess, these gigantic homes that seem to be, not correctly based, not built according to zoning laws. They're ginormous, like that house that you saw. I haven't seen one that big on Oahu, but there's a lot of them, and laws have been kind of coming down on it. There's been one on Oahu. Scott, you may know about this one on Sierra Drive in Kamuki, where there was a big monster home that they were starting to construct it, but it was stopped. Anyway, those are the quick news, gang, about what's going on in Hawaii. I'd be curious of what you folks, if those any free homes and that you've seen on the mainland. And again, look at the perfect weather that we talked about. Again, the best thing I love about Hawaii's weather, look at those consistencies. 82 degrees all the way across, 73 at the low, 82 as a high every single day. That's what's amazing about Hawaii. All right.
Yeah, the monster home one, that one actually hits home for me. I deal with it a lot. Not only have I chatted with agents that work with me, I've had a lot of in-depth conversations about this, because when you see, you go through Kaimuki and Kapahulu and they're starting to build setback to setback, or they have been for years here, and it's all concrete. There's no grass, no greenery. It's starting to change the landscape of the community, which hits a sore spot for me. Part of what I do, what I try to do with the development side for me, is keep the integrity of the neighborhood the same. And for once, a lot of these monster homes, some of them were like 16 bedrooms, 17 baths, 16 wet bars. They all have a wet bar in every bedroom. They're literally an apartment complex.
To interrupt, thank you so much for pointing that out. Because when you say monster, it doesn't mean just big. 16 bedrooms, right? So
some were even 20.
20,
right? Yeah. 20 and 20. And so the funny thing is none of them are illegal. If they went through permitting and got permitting, they were legal and they got approval. The problem is the zoning laws were so loose. And I actually had to go and testify down at city council for this when I was actually in the middle of that Haula project. I was doing a two home CPR, had 3-bedroom, 3-bath, and 3-bedroom, 3-bath. But because it was 2 homes on one lot, the zoning allowed for that. I actually fell into that area. We got permit approval, and then they changed the rules. City council did, to try to start restricting this, and we fell into that category. And they tried to pass a bill to say, hey, if we've given you approval for the permit, we can take it away from you. And we were in the middle of the construction, so I had to go down there and testify in front of them and say, look, I'm building affordable housing. You're going to train wreck, a few bad apples are going to be sideswiped. You can't give someone approval and take it away. But so they ended up getting rid of that part, but they've now started putting all these restrictions in. One is 30% permeation rate on your property so that water can absorb. Otherwise, if you're all concrete, now where's all that rainwater go? It goes onto your neighbors, goes into storm drains that can't handle it. The others are, they limited to a certain number of wet bars per the zoning. So like one, if you got 6,000 square feet, it's like 1 wet bar. They've limited the number of bathrooms. They've started to cut down. If you go a certain percentage of the lot, you have to be able to have like 6 parking, and they have to be able to turn around and go forward out of the property rather than back out. So they're getting there, but there's already been a lot of damage done. There's been a few that were built without permits, but yeah, it's changing the landscape of the neighborhoods here. And I understand the need for the bigger homes because it's an affordability thing, and you do multi-generational living. But people push the envelope, and they're able to get away with more, to where it starts to impact the community. The cars spill out onto the streets. You're impacting your neighbors at that point. They're parking all down the street, and nobody else can have street parking. So it is a problem that needs to be addressed. And the reality part of it is there's an affordability issue, and the other part of it is you got people who are really pushing the envelope on the zoning.
It's always a balance, right? So I think the other part now, what's interesting about that is that uh, uh, prior to these, well, I don't know if it was prior or not, but related to this short-term vacation rental zoning and stuff with the Airbnb craze, you had some of these properties. If you look at this thing, right? So let me pull this up on the screen. You could. It's not hard to envision that being a hotel, right? And if that's an Airbnb, right? It's an Airbnb. It's an Airbnb small boutique hotel in the middle of a residential area. It's questionable. And these homes were built, like you said, 16 bedrooms, each with a wet bar, quote wet bar, which you put a hot plate and you got a little unit, right? You have a little kind of a livable unit, and if it's in a great area near the beach, etc., it's an Airbnb. It's a hotel. So there's a balance. But to Dylan's point, there's also market pressures, right? The reason why the black market exists is because people want stuff that the government's stopping them from having, right? So you have to always kind of strike that balance, and you have to kind of set it up.
One of the things the county does here to somewhat prevent that is a lot of times if you go for permits to do an addition to your home or like enclose your downstairs and create a separate unit, they make you sign an affidavit saying that it will only be used for single family home residence purposes, and you will not rent it. So, whether how well they enforce that or follow up on it is one thing, but at least they have a mechanism in place where if someone were to complain about what you were doing it for, you can't use it as a rental. Basically, you can only use it as a multi-generational home or have, parents live in it or whatever it is. So that's one of the functions the county puts on your imposes on your property here.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's an important one that they've changed here. They changed it 2 or 3 years ago, and I actually had to, because the house in front here and I have the Ohana in the back. I was required to sign actually 2 different affidavits, one for a covenants restriction, but they changed the wet bar definition. It used to be you couldn't have all 3 elements. You could have the 220 for the range, you could have the sink or the refrigerator, but not all 3. And they've changed that now. They've gone over here and because everyone would put the 220 in the sink, and the refrigerator is a regular plug. So then when the permits close, you come in and you add the refrigerator easily, and now you got a full kitchen and nobody knows about it. So what they've changed it to now is you can't have the 220. The wet bar is only a sink and a refrigerator classified. So now they've put that restriction in, and you have to sign an affidavit and whatnot. But the problem is once you close the permit, who's going to enforce that? The only way that gets enforced is if a neighbor complains or somebody complains, and an inspector has to come out and have a look. The other interesting one that I had was this was weird. I actually took the certification for the erosion control component for our development property. I was the certified person responsible to do all the reports to make sure our erosion control on our lot was correct. So you got to have certain things. What they don't want is you have all that dirt. They don't want it going out into the ocean because it'll kill the coral. It runs off into neighbors' places. So you got to do certain measures to keep it in check. And if something's not right, you're supposed to put it on a report and submit it. Well, how am I the owner and I'm the guy that's supposed to police myself? Like, that makes no sense. But it was interesting getting the certification because I now understand the why. And it's part of it is coral protection and shoreline protection and sea life protection. When you have all that mud going into the ocean, it's going to cause real problems. And the interesting thing, that's part of the reason the permeation component is in there. When it rains, you need 30% of your property to be able to absorb that water, or it goes elsewhere. I walked around the neighborhood and I see so many newer homes where they close the permit and then they'll come back and they'll have somebody pave the concrete portion. And so it totally defeats the purpose of the intention of what they were trying to put in there. And I'm like, you're never going to control that. And who's going to complain? What neighbors are going to complain about that? And the homeowner's never educated like I was going through that certification to understand the why. So they're ignorant to the consequences and are only looking at their small lot and how it serves their purpose.
Man, this it's kind of funny. It starts out as a simple topic, and it got pretty darn deep. No, I appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot of depth over here, and I have to do. I'm sorry, I'm going to do this because I didn't start it, but Chris did. Chris, this is you, buddy. Chris said, "Hey, I have to say, Peter K, you have an amazing show and crew, and your website is very informative as well. Mahalo for doing this. Very informative. I actually go back and watch previous shows again." Chris, thanks, buddy. It ain't me. It's these guys right over here and Heidi. It's really that's what makes. I just put the slides together and kind of talk. But Chris, thanks for the comments. And this was a great example, right? This is a great example. We talk about one topic and bam, you get some really good depth. If you kind of want to know what's going on with monster homes, you just got educated big time. Yeah.
The first thing, of course, I want to react to the monster home thing, right? It's not really a problem here on the Big Island, or hasn't been yet, but it's always funny to me when government reacts to stuff like that. It doesn't look in the mirror. Like, why do people do that? It's because government has completely failed to create affordable housing or create the opportunity to build that stuff in the right areas, or have the zoning available so people can do that in the right areas. So what do? They figure out a way to skirt the law and do it anyways. And so it's always interesting when those things come up and there isn't a self-reflection on why is it happening in the first place, right? Because it's just not people being malicious. It's people that are doing what they got to do, and maximize their property value, and essentially what they're doing is creating affordable housing, right? I mean, they're making apartment buildings that are supposed to be in zoning for single family homes, but the net effect is that there are people that need places to live, and a lot of times those monster homes provide that, right? They're separate studios with bathrooms, and it's the private sector providing what the government has made it really hard to do, or has failed to do. So just the interesting
Dylan,
phenomenon here in Hawaii.
Dylan, come on, you know better. This is evil corporations and horrible landowners, slumlords that are taking advantage of everyone. You know better than that.
Absolutely.
It's not a response to what people want in affordable housing. Come on, you know better than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, what